Okay, we are back with Angie, and now Angie's gonna tell us the best part of the conversation, which is telling us about the challenges that teachers face. According to her, some of the challenges that she thinks, according to her, that teachers will one way or another face in their careers. So, Angie, please tell me and give me examples. When you're telling me about these challenges, I want somebody who is listening to this right now who's thinking about having a career in teaching, so that they can be mentally prepared to deal with those challenges. That will give them an idea. Oh, I'm gonna go into it or not. I'm not gonna go into it if it is like that. But at the very least, they have that option. They get to know what it's like to be a teacher, according to you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I think one of the big challenges we face right now is the achievement gap. So I look at the state of Minnesota right now. Our test scores are above the national average. However, when it comes to the achievement gap, we lead the nation in that, which is not good. So, what that means is we have an achievement gap with our white students and our minority students. So that's one problem. And then we also have an achievement gap between the socioeconomic status of our students. So our students who are middle class, upper middle class, wealthy, they're doing fine. It's our students living in poverty that are not doing well. And so we've got to figure out some way in education to reduce that gap. We got to bring those two groups together.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the pandemic has just made that gap wider, because now we have, we had kids in distance learning. Once the pandemic hit and we had to shut down schools and kids had to go to distance learning, now it really becomes exposed because of those kids who have the resources to learn at home online, and the kids who don't have those resources. That really just kind of exacerbated the problem. I don't know if you saw, it just came out probably yesterday or the day before in the Star Tribune, where test scores in Minnesota have plummeted. And it's because of the pandemic. And now we're trying to figure out, the state's trying to figure out, what are we going to do? Because we've got to get those kids caught up. So that is a challenge in education. The pandemic has made it worse, but I think that is a challenge that we're going to be facing for a long time. Yeah. So it's not going away, and it can be really, really frustrating. Because how do we bridge that gap? How do we get those two groups together? So anyway, that is a challenge. Another challenge I would say is, obviously, funding can be a challenge. Your funding for your school district is really based on the number of students that you have. And again, not to bring up the pandemic, but people have, they're uncertain about if they want to send their kids to school yet, if they're, whether or not their district is masking or not masking, that may, make their decision. And so funding is really tied to, if kids are in the building. And so that can be a challenge. Another thing I would say that is a challenge right now for teaching is the political climate. That's probably the most challenging part right now.
Also,
because we have, particularly in my school district, but it's happening all over the country. We have this divide where parents are now starting to try to dictate what schools can and cannot teach. And here's the problem. Everybody has attended school, right? K-12, some went on to college, whatever. And so everyone's an expert. Because I've attended school, I'm an expert on what should be done in a classroom. And as a professional, I'm offended by that, because I don't go to my doctor's office and say, I'm going to tell you how to do your job. And I don't go to my banker and tell my banker how to do his or her job. My lawyer, whatever. And so, but there is this climate out there right now that education is under attack, and that we have parents and we have groups of parents who think now they can tell us what we should teach, how we should teach it, what we should, let have our students read and what they can't read. And I just think that's a really scary, it's very scary, especially for new teachers. If I were to give new teachers advice, because I think this is another problem we have in education, or a challenge, is too many teachers are leaving the profession. They're starting and they are finding these they're being faced with these challenges and they're going, this is not worth it. Yeah. This is not worth what I'm getting paid. It's not worth the time that I'm putting in. I can go do something else and I don't have to have this constant public feedback. Yeah. And so I do think it's something that we have to, as a society, we have to look at. And I totally support parents who, want to voice their opinion, but they need to, they need to take a step back though and go, okay, what is it at the end of the day that I want to happen? And if I'm just here to voice my opinion, fine. But, attacking teachers is not going to help your school. It's not going to help your student. Yeah. And so I think we need to kind of reevaluate what is the purpose of that whole dialogue, and being able to have a discussion rather than it just being some kind of argument or finger pointing, so to speak. So I do worry about teachers leaving the profession. I think, like we talked about earlier, we don't take our best and brightest in high school and say, go be a teacher, right? Exactly. If you've got a kid who's a student who's great in science, we're like, oh, you should consider, being a doctor, being a pharmacist, or being, going into research and finding the cure for cancer. We don't say, you need to go be a science teacher, because kids need to learn from you. Yes. And so I think there are things that we can do as a society to make the profession a little more appealing. But I think right now, as schools continue to be attacked by different groups of parents and people, I think they better take a step back and look at why would our best and brightest want to go into teaching if that's what they have to deal with on a daily basis. Exactly. And so another challenge in education is that dealing with parents. Wow. I would say it's probably the most frustrating part of my job. And I love the fact that parents want to advocate for their kids, but we also have to look at what's best for all kids, not just what's best for your kid.
Yes, we are talking about how the parents sometimes they kind of interfere in the education system in a way that make the teachers a little uncomfortable. So, in that, there are many ways we can look at that, but one way we can see it is the parents maybe should. Clearly offer a suggestion, but at least let the teachers, the people in the education system, kind of do what they have to do for their kids, because they are trained professionals and they love to teach. So they should give them that chance so that they can do that. So Angie, you were talking about something so important here that I think many people would love to kind of talk about it. Keep the discussion going so that maybe we can come up with a solution. So why don't you follow up on that? And then we can ask more questions on the other side.
Okay. Yeah. So, parent involvement is obviously crucial and critical when it comes to education. But I do think that we've found ourselves in a climate where maybe parents are becoming too involved. And so taking a step back and saying, you know what, these are the professionals. These are the ones who know best, and letting us do our job, because we are in a situation right now where teachers don't feel that way. Yeah. They feel like they're being watched. They feel like they're being recorded, and pretty soon it's showing up on someone's Facebook feed or whatever. And I don't think anybody in any profession wants that for their job. Exactly. And so I do think that we, like I said earlier, I think as a society, we need to take a step back and go, okay, what message are we sending to teachers, and how are we going to get our best and brightest to go into education if this is how we're going to treat them? So another challenge, I think, in education, and it's kind of a hot topic out there as well, is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that all of our students, regardless of their gender, their age,
Mhm.
their, ethnic background,
Mhm.
their socioeconomic status, whatever it is,
Mhm.
that they all feel welcome in our schools.
Yes.
And so I think that is a challenge challenge for schools, depending upon maybe what area of the country you live in, what
Mhm.
area of the state you live in, whether if it's an urban school or a rural school. But I just think we should all that should be a priority for every school district out there, that every kid that walks through the door
Mhm.
feels welcome,
Yes.
they feel important, they feel valued,
Mhm.
because I think there's too much going on out there in the world right now that we have, I can't control my students' home life, right?
Mhm.
I have no control over that. When they leave my classroom,
Yeah. They are out there.
they're
Yeah.
out there,
Yeah.
right? So, but what I can control is how do they feel when they're in front of me?
Yes.
And I want every one of my students to feel special.
Yes.
I want them to know that Angie Klein values them as a student.
Mhm.
I want them to be successful. I want them to go out and do great things in the world, and that I believe in them, and I
Yes.
believe that they can do that.
Yeah.
So I would say those are probably some of the biggest challenges that teachers face right now, or that educators face.
Mhm.
Again, you know what, the day-to-day stuff of teaching, that's the easy stuff. It's
Mhm.
all this other stuff that's going on
Mhm.
that we really have maybe less control over,
Yeah.
that makes it really, really challenging.
Wow. Wow. Angie, I have to leave the door open for another professional lunch because this discussion, we need to have the discussion. Because the generation, what we put in the generation today, that's what's gonna make the world a better place tomorrow. So these kids, when we are teaching them, we have to find out how we can best serve those children at school. Whether parents got to come together, the teachers got to come together, and so that we can do that. So Angie, I want to thank you so much for having a professional lunch with me today. And I know that every professional who watch or listen to this gonna get something. It doesn't matter what your profession is, you're gonna get something from this because if you have family, you have little cousin, you have your own family, you're probably gonna use some of the tips and tricks that we have in this professional lunch so that you can improve it. You can give a hand to the solution of it. So, Angie, thank you so much for being here today.
You are very welcome.
All right. This is the part when I tell you it's up to you to make today a great day. So, have a great day.